Have you ever come across a project where you ran into many risks that could have been avoided? Do you want to better understand how to work through your client's fear of change? This video is for you. It will cover risks, RAID logs, fear of change, and much more. Welcome to 100 Days of Trailhead, where the tech community comes to learn Salesforce, learn tech, get inspired, and invest in ourselves. We are your trail guides, here to support you on your learning journey. We release videos weekly. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a video. In the description below, you can find links for everything we mention in this video, as well as books and resources we found useful. Visit our blog, 100daysoftrailhead.com, for other helpful Salesforce and tech content. Foreseen and unforeseen risks to projects can cause projects to fail or produce an unsatisfied customer. How do you best mitigate these risks? This video covers ways for you to better mitigate risks to your project. It discusses RAID logs and how to work through fear of change and much more. Amanda Beard-Neilson is a Salesforce MVP and has been in the ecosystem since 2007, now specializing in delivery of digital strategy for financial service clients. Amanda is a leader of London Admins Group and a co-organizer of London's Calling Conference, a blog writer and a conference speaker.
Hello everyone. My name is Amanda and I'm here today to talk to you about the top 5 project risks and how to mitigate them. But first, a bit about me. My name's Amanda Beard-Neilson. I'm a Salesforce MVP. I am the co-leader of the UK London Admin Group. I'm also a co-organizer of the London's Calling Community Conference. I am Trailhead Triple Ranger. I am 5-type certified, and I'm also the author of Diary of a Sassy Girl blog. So here I'm talking about the top 5 risks. So here's the agenda. First of all, I'm going to talk about the definition of a risk. I'm then going to talk about a RAID log. I'm going to go down the top 5 countdown, and then I'm going to summarize at the end. Now, coming from a project management background, I actually studied Prince 2, and this is the definition of risk from the book I took. It's an uncertain event or set of events that, should it occur, will have an effect on the achievement of objectives. A risk is measured by a combination of the probability of a perceived threat or opportunity occurring and the magnitude of its impact on objectives. Now, you might identify risks prior to starting a project, and you will certainly identify them during a project. Any risks that are identified could delay the delivery, but they could also open up an opportunity to deliver the project differently. When you do identify a risk, then you will probably put it into a risk register, as they were called, or more like a RAID log, as they're now called. A RAID log stands for Risks, Assumptions, Issues, and Dependencies. The idea of a RAID is so that you can escalate them so they can be resolved or at least accepted. But at the very least, they need to be mitigated. However, not all risks can be listed on a RAID log. Some of them can be a little bit too contentious or political, and you might not want to write those down. It's these type of risks, along with some of the standard ones, that I'm going to feature in my top 5. So let's dive in. Starting at number 5. And at number 5, we have the roadmap to nowhere. Now, this is a situation when you may have a customer who think that they've only got one shot at getting the requirements in their new system. And so they ask for everything. They don't think about changing any processes. They just literally grab everything and try and push everything into the new world. They don't also stop to consider any other departments wanting any of their enhancements done either. And so what happens is that you spend a lot of time taken up with one set of stakeholders, which means that there is an imbalance of resources, time and money, all on one set, and no one else being considered. You always have the risk that they don't think about any new features. They literally just want to lift and shift old world. And then there is the consideration that without any plan, then potentially chaos can rule within lots of different departments. So how do you mitigate this? Well, first of all, if you don't have a roadmap, create one. With a roadmap, you can actually start thinking about what projects need to be prioritized, when they should be done, and who should be involved in them as well. Make sure you keep it top line and then share it with all your stakeholder group. And then you can plan the resources available. Then comes logging dependencies. Now, we understand that in our technology world, it is highly connected. And so there's a lot of integration. And sometimes you might be relying on more than one team and technical expertise to complete it. Therefore, you need to review where your dependencies lie, because let's face it, they also will have their own priorities and projects. And then it's the element of reviewing your roadmap regularly. Check what the projects are and see whether they're still relevant and see whether they still need to be prioritized accordingly. Make sure you work with your key stakeholder group and to keep them engaged to make sure that you understand what their needs are. Coming in at number 4. And at number 4 is the not ready for change. Now, you see, some clients, when it comes to projects, just want to replicate the old world. They want to lift and shift any of their old data without looking at any of it and maybe thinking that maybe they don't need this. They don't look at old fields and think whether their processes have changed. They just want to get the project done. These are some classic traits of poor change management, where people just aren't open to the idea of doing something differently. They just want to keep the status quo. Thing is, though, sometimes projects can fail if the proposed change just isn't bold enough and you won't achieve the overall goal that you're trying to get to. So how do you mitigate that? Well, first of all, explain the why. What is the goal of the project? It could be economic. It could be competitors trying to take market share. It could be that there are legacy systems that are creaking and needing upgrades. Once you have explained the why of that project and its ultimate goal, then communicate the process of how the project will happen. When people aren't ready for change, then they will go through a fear factor and their own change curve throughout that process. They might be very worried about what will happen with their job and whether that job responsibilities will change, or they might not have any at the end of it, which is a real risk. As you're going through the project, make sure you elicit feedback at every stage to make sure that you might be on track and that you're actually delivering what you need to deliver on the way as well. Coming in at number 3. And at number 3, it's the people on the bus. And here I'm referring to stakeholders in a project. Now, the stakeholders might be the ones driving the change, but they could also be affected by the change too. You could have the management who is initiating the project at the beginning. You've got the end users who will be using the new system, and you've got the customers who might be impacted by the end result. But how many projects get the right combination of stakeholders involved in delivery? Do you know what? I've seen many times management making design decisions on processes only to be too separated by the day-to-day and getting it wrong. But then I also see team members asked to work onto projects and see their workload double because they're having to do their day job and also their project commitments. I've also seen stakeholders concerned about the project impacts and their change curve as well, and seeing what might happen too. You have to factor all of these things in and think about the customer as well. So how do you mitigate that? Well, first of all, get the right people involved in the project. Make sure that those people are empowered to make decisions. Don't let the managers be the ones who will make assumptions about processes on behalf of their team, because often they will find that they're missing things and there'll be gaps in your delivery. When you do have the right people on the job, make sure that you support them. If necessary, backfill their day job responsibilities so that they can focus on the project deliverables. Sometimes if you don't support them, then you'll find that people will end up leaving the company, which means suddenly there's a knowledge drain walking out the door. And then remember to keep communicating all the way through the project and differ your communication methods dependent on the role of the stakeholder. Make sure you are delivering information they need to hear at the right time. In at number 2. And at number 2 is the VIP. And here I'm referring to the customer, in fact, the end customer. Sometimes projects just aren't bold enough when they are thinking about change. And sometimes customers are afraid to make big change as well. I had one which had far too many products, which made it very confusing for their end customers to make a decision of actually what they wanted to buy. And ultimately, when you've got such a complex process, it's very difficult to get to their sale. When you're delivering projects, Sometimes the requirements just don't go deep enough to find out enough about the customer journey, what needs to be delivered at the right time. And then there are some departments who might be just a little bit too greedy on what data they want to capture and when. Then, of course, there is the projects that are a little bit too short-termist when it comes to the relationships. They just want to hit their targets. So how do you mitigate for VIPs? Well, simplify the offering at the beginning. Keep the choice and your products and whatever you're doing simple, because ultimately you want your customer to get to yes. So how do you get your customer to get to yes quickly? Prioritize the processes that will help the customer get to the deal. Then think about what data you are collecting, where you're collecting it during the customer journey, and if you really need to keep it as well. And then ultimately think about building the relationship with your customer and think about the long-term investment potential. Repeat business is so important. Don't be short-termist. And now for number one, the biggest risk when it comes to projects. And it happens to be trouble at the top. And I'm referring to the likes of the leadership, executives, project sponsors. These people here are the biggest risk to a project. Because if leadership is not aligned when it comes to the end goal of the project, then you can have people who will be in conflict with their interests and own personal targets. Or you could have a particular leader who has a command and control attitude and wants to deliver a project in a certain way, will have ego and pride issues, especially when things start to go awry. So how do you mitigate these? Well, if there are issues coming with the project and you need to be able to convey that message, then stick to the facts. Take all the emotion away from it. Remove any blame, as you need to protect those egos. If you're finding that your message isn't getting across, then find allies who will share your opinion and who will be able to back you up when you are delivering that message and having to escalate. However, if you are not feeling supported, if you don't feel that you're progressing and you're not able to challenge, then be prepared to protect yourself and walk away. Because let's face it, no project is worth risking your health and well-being. So let's recap. In summary, here is our top 5. We had roadmap to nowhere. And this is where if you don't have a plan and prioritize the projects, then you can risk one department just taking over everything and some departments being completely left out. So make sure you have a roadmap, keep it up to date, think about your dependencies and communicate it. In at number 4 came not ready for change. This is when businesses just aren't available to think about the change process and what might be the impacts of that, and therefore make bad decisions on what they bring forward, and therefore may not use the best of the functionality available to them. In at number 3 is the people on the bus, which are the stakeholders. Make sure that the management are making decisions and assumptions on behalf of the team. Make sure you've got people who are empowered to make decisions and support them where they need to, and don't forget to communicate. And 2 is the VIP. This is the customer. And the customer, you've got to think about simplifying your process with them so that they can get to yes quicker. Also think about what data you're capturing for them and think about the long-term investment as well. And number 1 is trouble at the top. And yes, that is the leadership team. Make sure that they don't have their egos getting in the way, that they are properly aligned together with the project outcomes and that they work together. Make sure that you're able to communicate. If not, find some allies. And if not, protect yourself. Walking away can be okay. So as you can see, there are some of these risks here you may not want to put onto a risk register or a RAID log. Some of them are very contentious and political. But you'll notice that they are people-orientated as well. Let's face it, 50% of a project change is based on processes and behaviors, not just technology. So before changing the technology, maybe challenge the need first. Maybe human behavior change could be very effective. Whenever you do think about a project, start simply and iterate, and then expand. Identify your risks and look to mitigate them as early as possible. Good luck with your projects. Thank you.
If you found this content helpful, we would really appreciate it if you subscribe to our channel and like this video. It really helps us a lot. And with that, we're at the end. How do you mitigate project risks? What did you learn today? Comment below. We would also love to hear what video topics you want us to cover in future video in the comments as well. If you've made it to this point, we want to take an opportunity to say thank you. Since you've stayed with us, here's a bonus tip. There are always more risks to watch out for when delivering projects than the top 5 I have listed in this presentation. Look out for those who overpromise and underdeliver, the unrealistic client expectation, toxic team member behavior, clients who won't give you access to the right stakeholders, and the lack of data strategy. Identify risks and mitigate them early. Thank you for spending time with us. Please like and subscribe to our channel because we share weekly content to support your tech and Salesforce learning journey. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss a new video. We also handpick these videos which we recommend you watch next. Connect with us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and on 100daysoftrailhead.com, all of which are listed below. Thank you for learning with us, and we'll see you back tomorrow.